When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Microsoft Azure. Turn your ideas into reality with an Azure free account. Get everything you need to develop apps across cloud and hybrid environments, scale workloads, create cloud-connected mobile experiences, and so much more. Discover what you can create with popular services free for 12 months. Learn more at azure.com. That's AZURE.com. And sign up for a free account to start building in the cloud today.
The Two-Footed Podcast is brought to you by EPLindex.com and our presenting sponsor, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider. A virtual privacy network allows you to go online, change your location, access things you're geo-blocked from, while keeping your data safe. So, as an example, if you are a UK expat and want access to BBC iPlayer to watch Match of the Day, or ITV Hub, or all four, will you get that message that says this content is not available in your location? A Liberty Shield VPN gets you around that block, allows you to watch whatever you want on those services while also keeping your data safe. And it goes further than that. It allows you to open up Netflix's entire library by just changing your IP address. Liberty Shield is the #1 rated VPN provider on Trustpilot with 5-star ratings across the board. So go to libertyshield.com right now, use the code EPL25 and get either the hardware package or the software package. The hardware package is a router that you plug into your existing router, and any item you want to change the IP address on, be it your phone or your television, you connect that to the new Liberty Shield router. All other items can remain connected to your existing router. There's also a software package, which is instantly downloadable to your device, and you can get using straight away. Again, libertyshield.com, EPL25 for 25% off at checkout. We're also brought to you by Home of Hopcroft, a giftware and homeware company located in Scotland but shipping worldwide. Check out homeofhopcroft.co.uk and do check out the EPL Index and Anfield Index shops, which you'll find on Etsy. Use the codes EPL10 or RED10 for 10% off at checkout. And lastly, do remember to check out A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. That podcast is on this feed before every Premier League match week. Now, on with the show. Let's do it, boys and girls. Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Thursday, September 5th. And would you believe it, the sun is actually shining in the sky. No rain so far today. Tremendous stuff altogether. It is Thursday. It is Questions Day. So part 1 we will dedicate to questions. I think we have 3, so that should take 15, 20 minutes, all going well. And then we'll do the next 4 teams of the Premier League and review their summer transfer windows and give them a rating. So, SGA55, you mentioned we were working on 2 other things and couldn't get it done. Presume left back was one of them. Do you think this could affect contracts? No, I don't think so. I have DM'd you on Discord with the names of the 2 players, but it's not my information. It's the information of other people, so I don't want to say it publicly. If they want to put it out publicly, they can do so, but I've DM'd you, so keep that to yourself. In terms of contracts, no, I don't think so. I don't think it'll have any effect on the contracts. I don't think... Well, one of the players they were looking to bring in could long-term and likely would long-term be a first-team starter replacing one of the 3 players who's out of contract, but he would have been brought in to start in a different position to help with the overall defensive shape. So I don't think it'll have any effect on that. Mo's contract wouldn't be affected and Trent's wouldn't be affected either. So No would be the answer there. Do you think we need to go to the step of paying sign-on bonuses to Trent, Virgil and Mo, to get them to sign new contracts? I'd imagine they probably would do that anyway. Now, it wouldn't be an enormous sum, I don't think, for any of them. It would be a signing bonus. It would be substantial, but you're not talking the 20, 30, 40, 50 million they could get as free agents. It could be somewhere in that 5 to 10 million range, which I think the club are more than happy to do. And did the last time Mo signed a contract, did the last time Virgil signed a contract, and the last time Ali signed a contract. So that is standard practice anyway, especially with how we operate and the fact that we give incentive-laden contracts. We do pay upfront lumps, and then we're happy to pay lumps for, winning trophies, winning the title, winning the Champions League, etc. If they want till January, they will get them anyway. If they wait till January, they'll get them anyway. So we may have to, as they've got all the power now. They do. Like, they ultimately do. But at the same time, they all want to, well, two of them definitely want to stay. The one in question is Trent. That's the real question mark. Does Trent actually want to stay? Or does he want to go to Real Madrid? Virgil and Mo definitely want to stay and have been very open about the fact that they want to stay. And all the reports that come out from behind the scenes are that they're desperate to stay. So I do think the club holds a little bit of power with those two. But ultimately, this comes down to mutual respect, which has been grown with Mo over the last 7 years, with Virgil over the last 6.5. And I think they'll come to a fair agreement which benefits both sides. Trent is the one I have some concern about. But as you pointed out here, given Trent's age, there could be a case to give him a massive signing bonus, plus a huge wage. You suggest 350k a week and another 100k in performance related. It's a lot of money. But even with that 100k, you're only coming up to, say, the base wage that Man City pay Erling Haaland. You're not even touching the 400 grand a week he earns in bonuses. And most of his bonuses are near guaranteed. They're just appearance fees, training fees, stuff like that. Haaland is earning his money whether he scores or not. There's probably added bonuses if he hits certain goal markers each year that we're not fully aware of. I would imagine Erling Haaland probably earns over £1 million a week from Man City, just from Man City. And I don't really have an issue with him earning that money, but I have an issue with them lying about how much he's earning. I would have no issue with us giving Trent that kind of money, given his importance to the team, given, the service he's provided already. We're talking about a kid that's 7 years into the first team, just about to turn 26, into his prime, already a world-class player and has been for a long time, the best right back in the world. It's just a matter of how many years. See, I would have no problem giving Trent that contract if he's willing to sign for 4 or 5 years. But if it's only 2 or 3, then I'm hesitant. I want to know that I'm getting Trent's prime and that we're not going to get into a situation in a couple of years where he's, 28 pushing 29, 1 year left on his deal, and all of a sudden he doesn't have the same kind of value he has now. He still wants that move to Real. His brother's still pushing for it. And we have more uncertainty. Trent needs to commit to 4 to 5 years at this club. We need to secure his prime. And as you say, we could turn to him and say, look, here's the situation. It's 350 grand a week. There's a potential to earn another 100 grand in incentive-related bonuses. And we'll give you 30 million, but we'll give you 6 million a year. So for every year you're on our team on the 1st of September, you'll get your 6 million. You're not going to get it all now, but you'll get it on the 1st of September every year as long as you're still here. Which means that if in 3 years he decided he wanted to leave, we'd still have a year, 2 years left in his contract. Actually, it'd be 2 or 3 years left in his contract if he did, because the contract wouldn't kick in until next summer. And you just say to him, look, the scenario is this is a roster bonus, similar to what they give out in the NFL. If you're on our squad on the 1st of September, when the window's closed, you will get this money. You could say the same to Virgil, the same to Mo, if you needed to. But if he leaves in the interim, we'll get a big fee, thankfully enough, and also save on that. Save on having to give him those extra years of bonus. I'd be happy enough to see that happening. Right, Matt JT. With everything hanging over their heads currently, which club has a brighter long-term future, Everton or Manchester City? Oh, so... like, Everton's problems are all short-term. The ownership, the threat of administration, threat of points deductions, the fact that the team is not very good. There is a decent level of talent there, but on the whole, it's not the brightest outlook in the world. But we know that worst case scenario with Everton, they get relegated and someone comes in and buys them as a championship club. This in the same way that Wes Edens and the Egyptian chap whose name is escaping me bought Aston Villa as a championship club and rebuilt them from there with a new stadium, with a decent academy, with some good young players on the books. I think they would be appealing. Now, of course, the issue is they do come loaded with debt, but a championship club, just by the nature of being in the championship, is always going to come with a lower price point than a Premier League club. So someone like John Textor might actually prefer to buy them as a championship club. Clear the debt, clear the books, get rid of high earners. Like, you know, they go down, realistically, Branthwaite's gone, Pickford's gone. I'm trying to think what other... Idris Gay would be gone, Doucouré would be gone. So I think of big earners there. Calvert-Lewin would be gone, Tarkowski would be gone. You'd rid yourself of the likes of Ashley Young, probably sell Michaelenko, and you just start over. Clear your books, get your wage bill way, way down, take the money from all of those sales, throw it against the debt, pay off Michael Dell, pay off 777. The new owner will take on the stadium debt, and that can be managed much better than how Everton have managed it. And then start to rebuild and give yourself breathing room. Give yourself a 3-year target of being back in the Premier League. And start to build a young core, you know? Like, if you look at, let's take example of what Hull did in the Championship, where they went out and they started to loan in good young Premier League players. They bought a couple of really good players in Philigen, in Jacob Greaves, and they were building something under Liam Rossinier before they decided to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Had they come up, they would have walked into the Premier League in a very good situation because they had a good young team. It obviously included some loans, but they would have been in a position maybe to buy a Tyler Morton and keep him. They might have been in a position to buy Fabio Carvalho and keep him. They would have kept Greaves, they would have kept Philigen, and they could have built on that. So Everton could go down and start to pick up the next Jacob Greaves, you know, in the Championship. Scout League One extensively, scout the Championship extensively, scout League Two extensively. Find the best young players who are not in Category A academies and pluck them away and buy high-level Championship talents. Like, how many really good Championship players have we seen in recent years? You know, Adam Wharton. What if a Championship club had gone to Blackburn, say 6 months before Palace bought him and said, we'll give you 5 million for Wharton, who hadn't really established himself as an every week starter as yet? Or even if it was 10 million, you know, you could be ambitious. You could look at the long-term situation and say, look, we're going for the Premier League, but we're going to go up with a team that's chock full of talent. You know, like the next Michael Elise could be out there, 8 million. The next Ronnie Edwards. There's absolutely a path for Everton to do that, come back up with an exciting young team where you're not having to come back into the Premier League and buy a ton of players. You might have to add 3 or 4 to it. You're adding quality though. You've got, because of the clear out, you've now got a strict wage structure, which you can stick to. You reward the players that help you come up by upping their money to, you know, more of a low-level Premier League salary. So, well, they might have been on 20 grand a week in the Championship. You bring them up to the Premier League and now they're on 40 grand or 50 grand, which is manageable. And you grow them and you say to them, look, the more you perform, the more you will earn. You put incentives in defenders' terms, you put them in for points gained, clean sheets kept. For goal scorers, you put in goal bonuses, you can put in creative bonuses, whatever you want to do, put in win bonuses. Obviously, and give players bonuses for every point you pick up. And you do it that way and you keep things sustainable. And all of a sudden, you're 5 years down the line, you've re-established yourself in the Premier League, you've got a very good team now of these young players that you bought at 18, 19, 20, who are now 23, 24, 25, established in the Premier League. Your finances by that point are completely under control. Your stadium is built, you're playing in it, you're just paying the cost of it every month as standard. And perhaps you get one player that really explodes and you can sell them and reinvest. Perhaps you can every summer maybe pick up one really good player that raises the level. But there's absolutely a path to doing it. It would just mean short-term pain for that long-term gain. But it wouldn't take... It would take patience. It would take, obviously, an owner willing to stick to a plan. It would take hiring the right people, smart people. But there's no reason Everton couldn't then establish themselves as a top-half Premier League team who get into Europe every odd year, who have a good cup run, who maybe, you never know, win a cup. And then they grow again, and they grow again. And you do it all sustainably. You never try and become a top 4 team. But if you build yourself to the point where you can challenge for top 4, and maybe one season out of every 4 or 5 you get in, maybe you fall into a rotation with the Aston Villas of this world, with the Newcastles of this world, where because there's probably going to be 5 Champions League spots for the Premier League, maybe every 3 or 4 or 5 years you get in once. And when you do, you take the money you earn and you go and you reinvest it in young talent. Rather than going out and buying one £60 million player and one £30 million player, you go out and you buy 4 or 5 £20 million players. You spread that money around. Because if you buy 2 players and only one of them hits, you've only got one good player. If you buy 4 players and only 50% of them hit, now you have 2 good players. And your resale value is also higher. And you take advantage of clubs like Manchester United, like Arsenal, like Chelsea, where there's too many young players to make the grade, and you start to snap them up as well. When there's a Mark Wahey who's not going to get game time at a Chelsea football club, you're the club that's there, ready to take him in. You're the club that's appealing to him. You know, when you're in the Championship, you're building relationships with those clubs. Going to Chelsea, who do you have that needs first team football? We'll take them in, we'll guarantee them games. Same with United. But you set a bar of this player has to be good enough for us. We're not just going to take anybody. They have to be good enough for us. They have to be an additive player. I do think that behind the clouds of darkness, that there could be a bright future for Everton. City, on the other hand, is a weird one because obviously, like, they've got all the money in the world. They've got Pep Guardiola. They have an exceptionally strong squad. They've got great players littered around the place. But they do have this enormous thing hanging over them, which, if football was governed properly, would lead to them being stripped of the titles earned in the period that it was under review, that was under investigation. It would lead to a second investigation in the period from 2018 to the modern day. And it would lead to their expulsion from the Football League, where they would have to go back to non-league and start over. And the issue for City is that if that happens, those owners are gone. Those owners are gone. They will sell that club for nothing and walk away. They might keep some of their interest, but they will sell the club and walk away because they don't care about the money. Now, they could double down and say, okay, fair enough. We'll rebuild from scratch. Watch how quickly we do it. And work the way back up the football pyramid. They could do that. But ultimately, football isn't governed in an honest way. It's not governed the same for everybody. So it's very unlikely that they would be expelled. Premier League could expel them. I'm not sure the Football League would turn their nose up at them. But the question then becomes, where do you put them? So you can't just put them in the Championship and say to all the other Championship clubs, right, these are in. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't work with 25, so one of you has to go. Like, you'd have to remove somebody from the Football League to put City in, but I'm sure they would find a way to fiddle it somehow. I think ultimately City have the brighter future because I don't have a ton of faith in the Premier League, in the Football Association to follow through and to treat this case the way it should be treated. City know that they cheated and City know they got caught, which is why they're spending so much money, which is why they've always refused to fully comply with the investigations, which is why they've used all these delaying tactics. City know they got caught. So now it's about putting pressure on in other ways. Mounting media campaigns, mounting political campaigns, because remember, Abu Dhabi has hella money invested in the United Kingdom. And that could lead to some very strong political pressure between Abu Dhabi and Downing Street, and then Downing Street and the Premier League and Football Association. So ultimately, I think City probably get an enormous fine and some sort of transfer ban and maybe something else, a points deduction to begin one season. But ultimately, I think they're just going to end up, you know, they don't care about a transfer ban. They've got enough players, their academy's stocked. They don't care about a big fine. If they said to them, look, it's £1 billion and then this all goes away, City would pay it. It's £1 billion, but you don't actually have to admit that you did anything. But just give us the £1 billion. City would pay it. They would pay it and they'd walk away. And most of the other clubs in the league would probably nod their heads like lapdogs and say, okay, because they know they'd get a share of that. they know they get a share of it because the Premier League is a partnership owned by the clubs. And ultimately, the clubs make these decisions. And if you were to say to each Premier League club, you are going to get 50 million quid, but City stay in the league, we're going to take 15 points off them for next season, and they're not allowed to buy players for 2 years. The other clubs would probably say, yeah, okay, you give us our 50 million, 55 million, whatever it will be, and we'll take that and we'll run. And we're happy with that. So I think the answer is City. I do. I think the answer is the Manchester City have the brighter future. Right. Last question then. Right. Alex's question is actually 2 questions. So, which Premier League team do you think will finish with the biggest points increase and decrease from the previous season? So, we're looking for someone that's going to make a significant jump. The teams that come to mind would be Newcastle United and Chelsea as the teams that could make a jump. United, they've reinvested again. Couldn't get much worse than last season. Chelsea, new manager, more money. Couldn't get much worse. The Toon haven't spent a lot, but they're relying on better fitness and the fact that they've got no Europe to potentially push them up the table. So if we look at last year's table, Newcastle finished on 60 points. Now, that's an 11-point drop from where they were the previous season. So we know that they're capable of breaking the 70-point mark. Last season, United also finished on 60. That was a 15-point drop. So again, we know they're capable of mid-70s. Chelsea finished on 63. The season before, they'd taken only 44. We don't know that this Chelsea team is capable of 70-odd points. The last time they got 70-odd points was 21-22. This team and that team bear no resemblance. There's very few players who are in that team. Reece James is the only one. There were a couple more at the club, but Reece James is the only one. So, I would say, based on talent, Chelsea have the best chance of making a significant jump. They would be looking to move from 63 probably to about 70 to get 4th. Last season, the teams that got 4th and 5th both finished on 68 and 66. So you're looking at 22, 23, 71, 71, 67. You're probably looking at 71, 72 points to be certain of 4th. Are Chelsea capable of that type of jump? The early signs suggest no. The early signs suggest no. But it is a new manager, so the longer he's there, the longer he has to put his ideas in place, to shape the tactical approach. Maybe. Newcastle, I do think, underperformed significantly last year, largely because of the injuries. They will get Botman back in a couple of months. That will help massively. I do think we'll see them spend in January. So I think Newcastle are capable of getting towards that 70-point marker. So I'm going to say Newcastle are the team that make the biggest jump. Yeah, I'm going to say Newcastle. Because I haven't been impressed at all with United. The Toon haven't been good, but they've got 7 points. And that's something they weren't able to do last year. So I'm going to say the Toon. I'm going to say the Toon get between 10 and 12 points more than they did last year. The biggest decrease, I mean, this is tough because you're basically, again, looking at that same crop of teams. You would include Arsenal, Liverpool, Villa, Spurs, plus those three, and maybe West Ham. Because when you look at the likes of Palace, actually, do you know what? Brighton are a stealth contender for biggest increase. Because they only took 48 points last year. In 22-23, they took 62 points. They have lost McAllister and Caicedo, obviously, after that year. But this summer, they've spent a lot of money and spent, I think, a lot of it well. The players that came in last summer, I'm thinking specifically Verbruggen, Baliba, and João Pedro, are all going to be a year older, all a year more experienced, and all a year more developed. I'm actually going to change my pick for biggest increase. I'm going to say Brighton. I don't think they'll get Champions League or anything like that, but I think it's very easy to see Brighton going to 62, 63 points. I think it's very easy to see that. So I'll actually go Brighton. Somewhere between 13 and 15 points more. Now, back to decrease. When you look at the teams that finished, say, 10th and below, you're suggesting that if they take a big drop, they're potentially going down. So that would be Palace, Brighton, Bournemouth, Fulham. Don't believe any of them are going to have any real risk of relegation this year. Thought Fulham were trending that way, but they closed the window strongly. Wolves, there's definite potential. There's definite potential for Wolves to be the big drop. Now, the thing is, based on last season, they could take a 19-point drop and still stay up, but I don't think anybody is finishing 18th on 29 points or 26 points this year. I think that one of the teams that gets relegated will break the 30-point barrier. So I think Wolves, there's a real possibility they end up on like 36, 37. So I'll say Wolves as an option of the bottom group. And then at the top, I don't see United having a big drop-off. I do think they'll get more points than last year. I think Toon will get quite a few more. I think Chelsea will get more. I actually think Spurs will get more points than last year as well. Villa, I could see getting less, but I don't think it'll be drastically less. I think Liverpool will finish in and around the same points tally. I think somewhere between 82 and 86 for Liverpool this year. I don't see a big drop-off. I don't see a drop-off really from Arsenal either. I could see Arsenal maybe finishing with 4 points less than last year, but not a significant drop. Like, I don't see Arsenal finishing with 77 points, for example. I think they're too strong defensively for that. So I'll go Wolves overall. So I'll go Brighton for the biggest jump, followed by Newcastle. Wolves for the biggest drop, followed by I feel like Brentford starts a bit of a false dawn, but do you know what? I'll say Everton. I think Everton could finish 5, 6, 7 points less than last year. And they may also get points deductions, so we'll see. But yeah, Brighton and Wolves, they're the two. Could you name a few senior players around the league that were senior players last year that you think could have a big jump in the way Solly March had his big jump the season before last? Okay, nobody at City, nobody at Arsenal, nobody at Liverpool. I mean, I think the perception of him is that he's an excellent player, where in truth he's a decent player who's capable of excellent games. John McGinn could be one, but people already have a perceived idea of him that he's really consistently 8 out of 10. He just isn't. So he could be one. I mean, Dan Burn, potentially, just given the fact that he's now playing more centre-back, I do think it's possible that we see a better version of him. But when Botman comes back, he's not going to be playing centre-back. Although they'll probably ease Botman back in. Past them, it wouldn't surprise me if Tyreek Mitchell... Now, he's not necessarily a senior player because I think he's only 24. Tyreek Mitchell. He's 25. He was 25 4 days ago. So congrats to him on his birthday. Tyreek Mitchell is one I do think could take a significant step forward in his development at this point because he's playing for a manager that's giving him a lot of attacking freedom. But he's already an England international, so I don't know if that's going to be the type of jump you're looking at. West Ham, I mean, Max Kilman, look, everybody knows Max Kilman is good. West Ham just paid 40 million for him. So for him, the jump would have to be that he gets into the England squad and starts to look really good for England. I don't think it's outside the realms of possibility, but I also don't think it's entirely likely. Bournemouth. I mean, Semenyo had a good year last year. I think there's still more to come from him, but I don't think that will classify. Fulham. I mean, I don't know who you'd be looking at Fulham. Anthony Robinson, maybe, just starts to put it all together on a consistent basis, but he's starting from a higher starting point than Solly was. I think Lamina took a jump last year. He'd be the one from Wolves. Hwang is probably the one at Wolves that's potentially capable of taking his game to the next level and finding a really consistent vein of goal-scoring for him. Everton. Jack Harrison would be one. I think there's a lot of talent with Jack Harrison. He just never quite puts it all together. Now, very hard to, as an attacking player, really shine when your manager is Sean Dyche, but Jack Harrison could be one. I think Jack Harrison's one. I think Matthias Jensen could be one. I think he's a very good player. I think he's quite underrated. Janelt. Janelt's probably... What age is Janelt? Is he 27 now? Janelt. He's 26, actually. So Vitaly Janelt. I will go for him. So I do think he's a very good player. I'll go for him. I think there's a chance at 26 he finally shows the full range of what he can do. He's very good at pretty much everything. Now, he might be seen as a little bit better than what Solly was, but used in similar ways. Like, he's the one that kind of fills in here, there, and everywhere for Brentford. I think if he got a consistent run just in central midfield, if they had everybody fit, I think he would surprise people by how good he is, how physical he is, what a good passer he is. So I'll say Vitaly Janelt. And that's the last question. So I'll be back after the break with the first two of today's teams.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Right, welcome back. So, next up on our list for clubs to assess their transfer windows is Manchester City, who signed Savinho re-signed Ilkay Gundogan and signed Divin Mbama from West Ham. They spent 23 million. They sold a lot of players, but a lot of them had been on loan, and the only two that really count are Julian Alvarez and Sergio Gomez, because they're the only two that were in the squad last year. Taylor Howard-Bellis was on a loan with an obligation. Tommy Doyle, loan with an obligation. They got good money for Liam Delap, and they sold João Cancelo to Al Hilal because Pep didn't want him around the place. They made a profit of £125 million. Sorry, £135 million. They loaned out another raft of players. They released Jamal Baptiste, and they gave a new contract to Stefan Ortega. I think there was a couple of things they needed to do this summer, and they didn't do them. Number one, they didn't buy a competitor, replacement, successor for Kyle Walker, which I think is something they have to address, and thus far have not done. They didn't replace Julian Alvarez, and now they have no backup if anything happens to Erling Haaland. You would question where the goals will come from if Haaland isn't in the team. If he misses a game for whatever reason, you would have to question where the goals come from. Because if you look at Alvarez, last season, he very quietly put together an excellent campaign, flying under the radar a lot. But when Haaland was hurt, it was him who stepped up and played really well. When KDB was hurt, it was him that stepped up and played really well. And now they don't have him. And last year, and the season before, to be fair, when he played a gargantuan season from the entirety of a La Liga or an Argentine Premier League season, the World Cup, the entirety of City's treble campaign, he was outstanding. Last season, he had 19 goals and 13 assists for Man City. They're going to miss that. Savinho's very, very talented. There's no question. He's really talented. He's going to be a very good player. Right now, he's a 20-year-old winger still trying to figure out how to play the game. He's not replacing what they got out of Alvarez last year. Ilkay Gundogan coming back helps, gives them more depth in midfield, but ultimately he's soon to turn 34 and isn't the same player he was a couple of years ago. Last year at Barcelona, he showed signs of decline. Significant signs of decline at times. Now, City will be able to manage his minutes a lot better. He's not going to play 51 games for them. I reckon he probably tops out around the 40 to 42 mark across the year. He's still a good player. He's not the great player he was, in my opinion. I think they failed to get done what needed to get done. I'm going to give them a C-, similar to Liverpool. Manchester United. So, they loaned out Jadon Sancho on a loan with an obligation to buy. They took a huge loss on it, but ultimately, Dan Ashworth and co can turn around and say, well, we didn't sign him, so it's not our fault. Alvaro Carreras left. That was a deal that had been agreed the previous summer. Tom Huddleston retired. Charlie McNeil, Rafael Varane and Shola Shortire left on freeze. Anthony Martial and Brandon Williams were released. Omari Forson left on a free. They sold Donny van de Beek at an enormous loss. Again, Ashworth and co can say, we didn't sign him, not our fault. They somehow got money from Mason Greenwood. They sold Willie Kambwala. They sold Aaron Wan-Bissaka at a huge loss. Again, not their fault. They sold Palestri, sold Oyedele, sold Will Fish, sold Mejbri, and got a good fee for Scott McTominay. Coming in, Joshua Zirkzee, good player, little overpaid, but fair enough. Lenny Yoro, incredibly good prospect, but a significant overpay. Matthias de Ligt I'm not keen on. 5 mediocre seasons in a row. 2 clubs that gave up on him. Happy to sell him at a loss. Mazraoui I really like. Sekou Kone I don't know anything about. They've brought him in directly from a club in Mali. So I've no idea. He's a defensive midfielder. We'll see how he gets on. He's 18. I wouldn't expect we see much of him in the first team anytime soon. And then they signed Manuel Ugarte, who's a player I love. I just don't love the fit. Now, he had a bad season last year with Paris Saint-Germain. I wouldn't put that on him. I put it on a poor manager. Prior to that, he had 2 really good seasons with Sporting. He had a good half season with Famalicão. He's a good player. He is undeniably a good player. Really good at what he does. It's a touch of an overpay, but it's within the margin of what you're fine with. I just don't like the fit. I think him and Mainu is a horrible fit. Neither of them have tactical or positional discipline. They're both ball winners. Now, Mainu less so. Ball winning is not his primary skill set. It is Ugarte's primary skill set. So neither of them are going to shield the defence, which means teams are still going to run through that midfield. Now, they will get chopped down because Ugarte will get back and chop more of them down. But he can only do that so many times. But the bigger issue is neither of them are progressive passers. Neither of them are a lad who can take the ball off the centre-back, turn, see the field, and pick the pass. Mainu's great at receiving on the turn and carrying, or receiving on the turn and popping it off and moving again. Ugarte is limited on the ball. He's not bad on the ball, he's just limited. When he plays within himself, he's absolutely fine. But that involves him taking it from the centre-back and giving it to the full-back. And United don't have great passers at full-back. Dalot is good on the ball, Mazraoui is good on the ball, Shaw's good on the ball. They're not great passers of the ball. So they're going to be relying heavily on Lisandro Martinez as their progressive passer from the back. And he's a decent passer, no question. But you want someone in midfield that can progress the ball, and they don't have that. I think in the long term, Yoro will prove to be a good buy. But ultimately, if he hits, he's going to want to force his way out unless they sort everything else around. Xerxes a gamble on talent. Like I say, he's a good player. He's not lived up to the billing of when he was kind of 16, 17 and people were talking about him as one of the next great number 9s when he broke into the Bayern Munich B team, and I think he scored a hat-trick on his debut. He was like 17. And from there on, he carried a lot of hype. Well, actually, from about a year earlier, from when he was at 16, he carried a lot of hype as this kind of Zlatan-esque 9 who could do everything. But when you look at his senior career, never really performed for Bayern, didn't do well at Parma on loan, had a good season with Anderlecht, but not a great season. And he spent 2 years at Bologna. The first year he was in and out of the team and only scored 2 goals. Last year he was good, but he only scored 12 goals in 37 games. He's not a prolific number 9. He's not a prolific goal scorer. And he's 23. And you last summer went and bought a striker for enormous money who's 21 years of age and still trying to figure out how his feet work. So I don't think you addressed some of your biggest needs. But if we look at what they bought, it's an improvement certainly on what they've been buying previously. There's a younger profile of player. There's still some significant overpays. There's still some significant overpays on wages. But ultimately they have gotten better. The issue is always going to be that they didn't rectify the manager situation. I'll give them a B. I'll give them a B, and I'll be back after the break. Right, welcome back. So next up is the turn of the players that left on free transfers. Only Cousin Jeff is really of interest to me, although Loris Karius is there as well. They loaned out Jamie Miley, Max Thompson, Harrison Ashby, and Jamal Lewis. A couple of other young players as well. They signed Odysseus Vlachodimos. Now, there are conflicting reports on what they paid for him. Nobody's quite certain. Some reports suggest they paid 20 million for him in order for Forest to overpay them for Elliot Anderson. I don't believe that. I think they probably paid around 10 million, which is still far too much, but I don't believe they paid over 20 million. They signed Lloyd Kelly on a free. It's a good depth signing. They made the Lewis Hall deal a permanent one. That's a good signing. I don't mind the price at all, but it was a deal that was agreed a year ago. They signed John Ruddy on a free because you can never have too many goalkeepers. Miodrag Pivas was signed. He's a young centre-back. And they signed William Asula from Sheffield United for 15 million, who I do like. And I think that's a decent signing with a view to the long term. So I'm fine with that. They did not address centre-back. They did not address right wing. They hummed and hawed over the Guehi thing all summer. They hummed and hawed over a deal for James Trafford all summer and ultimately got neither of them done and couldn't secure the right winger. The reason right wing is such a big issue is that they sold Yankuba Minta. And I don't care what your profit and sustainability said. I would not have sold that kid. Not for 30 million, not for 40 million, not for 50 million. Because I think you had a really special talent on your hands there. They also sold Elliot Anderson, a homegrown player, an academy-grown player. 35 million is a good price. However, you couldn't have sold some of your squad players and kept your two best young talents. You couldn't have sold Longstaff, Willock, Trippier, players like that. No. I think they've had a really poor window, if I'm being honest. I think the Lewis Hall deal being bundled in makes it look a little bit better than it is, but based on the public pursuits of multiple players and the fact that you sold, I believe, your two best young players, two players who I think could be starting for you this season, let alone long term, this season, I think both of them could be starting for you. Minta on the right of the front three, and Anderson in one of the three midfield roles. Bruno will have one. I think Anderson could have claimed another one. I know you've got Tonali. I know you've got Jolington. I know you've got Willock. I know you've got Longstaff. But I think Elliot Anderson's a really, really big talent. And I think you've made a mess. I think this is probably going to be the worst grade I give. I'm giving them a D. I'm giving them a D. I just don't think that's a good window at all. But I do believe Newcastle will have a better season this year than they did last year. Purely on the basis of, I think there's a chance they keep players fit this year. Harvey Barnes missed quite a bit of last season through injury. I really like Harvey Barnes. I think he can contribute a lot more this year. He only played 21 Premier League games last season. Tonali missed all of last season. He's not worth what they paid for him, which was around 70 million euro, but he's still a good player. And you have him available now. So I think that helps. We'll see more of Livramento. We'll see more of Lewis Hall. That helps. Botman will come back. That will help enormously. He was the best centre-back in the league in 22-23. Last season, he struggled greatly because he was playing through a torn ACL, partially torn ACL. And then he fully tore it and had to have surgery. So we'll see when he comes back, but he'll be back for probably half the season and he'll improve them. So I do think they'll have a better season than they did last year, but the window's a D. And our final team today then is Nottingham Forest. So they gave new contracts to Ola Aina, Woody Bolly and Ryan Yates. Not sure why they felt the need to give Ryan Yates a 4-year contract, but they did it anyway. They released Harry Arthur, Felipe, who retired, Wayne Hennessy, Czech Koyate, Loke Mbeso, and Scott McKenna. They loaned out Matt Turner, Omar Richards, who I was really hoping we might get to see this year, Lewis O'Brien, Jonathan Panzo, and Josh Bowler. They loaned in Alex Moreno and James Ward-Prowse. Not a big fan of either, but they're decent squad players to have. And Ward-Prowse obviously offers something with set pieces. I just don't think he should be starting for this team. Remo Freuler left. That was agreed a year before. Vlachodimos left. They sold Oral Mangala. That deal had been agreed in January. They sold Musa Niakate. 27 million was a really good fee to get for him. They sold Joe Worrell to Burnley, which is a very Scotty Two-Coats kind of buy, but Worrell is good for the Championship. They brought in Marko Stemenic, a young defensive midfielder who I believe has gone straight out on loan to Olympiacos in Greece. They signed Eric Da Silva Moreira. Don't know a ton about him. Young right back. Elliot Anderson, obviously. Carlos Miguel, the goalkeeper. Nikola Milinkovic, the centre back, is a really, really good signing. Jota Silva. Don't know how he's going to adapt to the Premier League. Good player in Portugal, not necessarily a standout player in Portugal, but had a very good year last year. Ramon Sosa arrived, Paraguayan left winger. Paraguayan left. I think he's left winger. It's a big step up coming in from Argentina. We'll see how he does. Then they signed David Carmo, a very good centre-back, who had a horrific ankle injury a couple of years ago, fell out, then moved to Porto, was at Braga, had the ankle injury, came back, looked decent, moved to Porto, started well, fell out with the manager, got loaned out to Olympiacos last year, did really well for them. And then Forest have bought him and immediately loaned him to Olympiacos for a year. And then they signed Morata, who's another left-footed centre-back. Now, he can also play left-back, but he's another left-footed centre-back. Now, what's just interesting about this is they've signed 2 left-footed centre-backs and loaned one out. I'm guessing this is a tell that they're planning to sell Murillo next summer. And they're preparing themselves to not have to buy a replacement. So when they get 50, 60 million for him, they just mark it all as money coming in and there's no money to go out in that window for that position. They tried all summer to get a striker, couldn't get it done. I don't think they've addressed their goalkeeping situation well enough. So I hit them on that as well. I would have preferred a better left back than Alex Moreno, but he's solid enough. He's not good defensively, but he's good going forward. I was really excited to see how the midfield would look because Sangaré had done well in pre-season. Danilo is a really good player. And 8 minutes into the first game of the season, Danilo's off with a broken ankle. So we'll see. Have they done enough to stay up? I think maybe. I really like the Milinkovic signing. I really like that. And I think Morato's good as well. I do think he's a good player. So you could play him at left back, Murillo at centre back with Milinkovic. And you could throw Oma Bamadelli at right back. If you want to be really strong defensively, that's probably the play. Now, it also looks to me like they may be setting up to move to the back 3 that Nuno prefers. So we'll see how that works out. Overall, little bit of it's an overpay on Anderson, but I do really like him as a player. But they underpaid drastically for Milinkovic, who clubs are being quoted 40 million for him only a couple of years ago. And it's not like he's washed. He's 26 years of age. He's got plenty of room to still get better. I'll give them a B-. So that is 16 of this season's Premier League teams. We will also have a look at the 3 relegated teams. We'll do that Monday. So tomorrow we've got Southampton, Tottenham, West Ham, and Wolves. Might actually just do the 4 of them and the other 3 tomorrow. Though I do want to have a look at the championship games as well. So it'll probably be Monday then for the relegated teams. Yeah, so we'll do Southampton, Tottenham, West Ham and Wolves tomorrow. Have a look at what's coming up in the Championship, League 1 and League 2 and the National League over the weekend. Maybe take a quick glance as well at... next week, obviously, I said I'd take a quick glance through some of the bigger clubs around Europe and how they did in the transfer window and just sort of get us through until late next week when the games are closer to returning. We'll have some nostalgia next week. We won't do another Stoke, but I have a couple of things in mind. I've one club in particular in mind, inspired by Stoke. Maybe not for next week, maybe the week after. Anyway, that'll do me for now. I'll be back later today with the 2-footed extra, so I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.